Hi everyone, this is PJ, and I'm sorry to say that the last Infinity Redux Chapter 4 had a massive issue with it. I forgot to remove some of the audio, and I can't find the original audio for the Chapter 4 video that I made, so I'm re-recording this. Anyway, here we go. Infinity Redux by midnightwolf2192, Chapter 4, Last Time. Okay, Pete, get ready, Reality said. Peter felt something cool drip over his head and he closed his eyes. Who are you? A strong male voice demanded, and Peter felt control return to his body. He opened his eyes and found himself staring into the eyes of two powerful teenagers. Now, before Peter could say anything, Wanda's eyes flashed red and her magic swelled up around her. Pietro moved and Peter found his arms being pinned behind his back. Who are you? How did you get here? Wanda hissed. She was slowly advancing on Peter, and he couldn't help what came out of his mouth. Your magic is so cool, Peter said, and Wanda stopped. Peter then looked up at his shoulder to look at Pietro's confused face. And you? Dude, if I had your speed, I'd never be late for school again. The sound of the teens' excitement had both the Maximoff twins pausing. In Hydra, no one was jovial, and everyone feared Wanda. No one thought her magic was cool. Her magic was a weapon to be used to further Hydra's plans. How did you get here? Wanda's voice was now softer, gentler as she spoke to Peter. Her magic tapered out, and to Peter she now looked more like a scared teenager. You are too young to be a part of this. So are you, Peter said without thinking. Both Wanda and Pietro looked at him with pain in their eyes. We lost our youth a long time ago, Pietro said. He and Wanda both sat down on the cot again, and Peter found himself sitting at their feet. What is your name, Selemik, little one? Peter. My name is Peter, he replied, and both Wanda and Pietro smiled. Just like you, brother, Wanda said with a fond smile on her face. She then turned to Peter and ran her fingers through his hair. I am Wanda, and this is Pietro. It's nice to meet you, Peter said, holding his hand out. The twins shook his hand and Peter grinned at them. So, what are you guys doing here? Wanda and Pietro shared a glance, and from what Peter could see, they looked almost ashamed. Peter knew very little about Wanda's story, only what Mr. Stark had told him before. He knew that some of it had to do with Mr. Stark's past, but his mentor had never really delved into it. Don't be ashamed, Peter said softly, shocking both twins. I'm not going to judge you. We volunteered for Hydra experiments, Wanda said softly. Pietro took her hand, and not for the first time Peter wondered what it would be like to have a twin. They gave us these powers, and promised to help us get revenge. Revenge? On whom? Peter asked. An American, Pietro said bitterly. His weapons killed our parents, and almost killed us. We were 10 years old, just having dinner. The bomb hit and killed our parents. Another one hit, but it didn't detonate. We waited 2 days for Tony Stark's weapons to kill us, Wanda hissed out, tears now welling in her eyes. We swore that he wouldn't get away with it. Then Hydra came along. When was this? Peter asked softly. 8 years ago, Pietro said. Peter noticed Wanda's hand was still running through his curls, and he moved closer to her. Not only was it soothing him, but it seemed to be soothing her. I don't mean to be blunt, but it probably wasn't Mr. Stark then, Peter said, and the twins looked at him in anger and confusion. Peter held up his hands placatingly. I'm not trying to trivialize what happened to you guys. It was awful. But 8 years ago, Mr. Stark was kidnapped. What do you mean, kidnapped? Pietro asked. Don't cover for him. He killed our family. I'm not covering for him, Peter said calmly. I'm just saying. 8 years ago, Mr. Stark was kidnapped while he was in Afghanistan. When he was found, he realized his business partner had been selling his weapons on the black market. the first thing Mr. Stark did when he got back was to shut down the weapons manufacturing side of Stark Industries. You are an American, Wanda commented. You could be lying to us. We don't know you. You don't, Peter said. He looked at the floor for a minute before he faced the teens with a bright smile. Well, we need to change that, don't we? Change it? Pietro asked, confused by the child's sudden change of demeanour. Yeah, we should get to know each other, Peter said. He turned his head when he felt Reality tapping him on the shoulder. Reality tapped his wrist, indicating they were out of time. But we can't do it right now. I have to go. But I will come back to you guys as soon as I can. I really want to get to know you guys. We will miss you, Pietro said. He wasn't going to hold Peter to that. If someone left Hydra, they never really returned. And this boy was probably nothing more than a figment of his sister's imagination that was being projected. Come back soon, Soramik, little sunshine, Wanda said, her face falling slightly. Peter stood and waved to the Maximoff twins before allowing reality and space to whisk him back to his body. End Dreamscape. Peter woke up to the sound of Aunt May calling out that it was time to leave for dinner. Peter paused to the Netflix show he had fallen asleep to and shut the laptop. I need to go back there as soon as possible, Peter whispered as he grabbed a jacket. His tattoo warmed and pulsed in agreement. He walked out to the living room and smiled at Aunt May. Let's go. I'm starving. The restaurant was only a few blocks away, so instead of driving, May and Peter decided to walk. May and Peter walked into their favourite restaurant, and after ordering, May turned to Peter. What? I didn't do anything, Peter said insistently, and when he noticed her raised eyebrow. May continued smirking at him, and Peter raised his hands. I haven't even got detention this month. And I am glad, May said, before bursting into peals of laughter. Peter groaned and dropped his head onto the table as May laughed. Sorry, couldn't help myself. Now that you've scared 10 years off of me, what did you want to say? Peter asked. I was just wondering when you were going to tell me, May said, and Peter felt his blood freeze. There was no way she could know about Spider-Man. He hadn't told her, and all the members of the cluster had been sworn to secrecy. When were you going to tell me that you were essentially doing junior classwork? I got a message from your principal commending you for your work and dedication. Oh, Peter said, his heart rate dropping back to normal levels. Well, it just slipped my mind. I was getting bored in some of my classes, so I asked my teachers for some harder work. That's all. Peter! That's awesome! May said excitedly. She reached out and took Peter's hands in hers. Peter, this is great. You should be so proud of yourself. I am, Peter said. He stopped when the waiter appeared with their drinks and starters, only to start again when he had finished. Do you think they'd be proud? Peter had rarely spoken to May about his parents, and because of that he knew very little about them. Being so young when he had lost them, Peter hadn't had a lot of time to learn about them. This time around, he wanted to get to know all that he could about them. May's gaze softened and a gentle smile crossed her face. They would be so proud, May said softly. Your mother used to call you her little miracle. Your dad would call us any time you did something, like when you walked for the first time. He called Ben and just cried at him for 5 minutes. You've got both of their brains, honey. I'm so glad to see you using them. Thanks, May, Peter said. May kissed the back of Peter's hand before both Parkers dug into their food. When their mains arrived, Peter decided to test the waters about Spider-Man. So, what do you think of Spider-Man? Interesting topic change, May said. She took a bite of her food and looked pensive as she chewed. I think it's pretty great that Queens has someone looking out for her. I mean, the Avengers are good, but they focus more on the big things, so having someone look after the little guy is pretty reassuring. Why are you asking? Just wondering. Ned and Abe have been talking about him all the time, Peter replied. May nodded in understanding, and the conversation went into a lull. Peter leant over and took some of May's noodles from her plate. If I wanted to be a superhero, what would you say? Well, to start, I would have been pissed. But then I'd remember that you have always been a selfless kid who needed to help people. May replied, shocking Peter. She waved her chopsticks at him. But don't get any ideas. I like having you alive and healthy, young man. Peter gave her a two-fingered salute and May threw a noodle at his head. Once they finished their meal, Peter and May walked back to their apartment. When they arrived, May kissed Peter on the cheek and headed to the bathroom to shower. Peter walked into his bedroom and dropped down on the bed. Dreamscape. You are getting much better at this, Reality said as Peter lifted his head and looked up. Practice. Can we go back to the Maximoffs? I think I was just getting somewhere with them, Peter said. Reality nodded and Peter felt the dizzying experience of travel before Reality dropped him in the Maximoff's cell again. The twins noticed Peter's presence and both of them jumped to their feet. Hi guys! You came back! Wanda said with an excited smile. How did you persuade your handlers to let you come back? Handlers? I don't have handlers, Peter commented. Unless you count MJ, but she doesn't know I'm here, so what she doesn't know won't hurt her. You do not have a handler? Pietro asked, confusion lacing his tone. Everyone in Hydra either had a handler or was a handler. Even the scientists and lab techs had handlers. But how? Everyone in Hydra has a handler. Oh, Peter said. He looked around the cell and frowned. That would explain it then. I'm not Hydra, so therefore I don't have a handler. If you are not Hydra, who are you? Wanda asked. Like her twin, she was quite confused. How can you be here? Tell them that you are a byproduct of the stones, that you are there to help them, Mind whispered in Peter's head and he nodded. The stone? The one that gave you guys your powers? Peter said, and when the twins nodded, he continued. Well, there's 6 of them scattered all over the galaxy. They sent me here to help you. Help us? How can you help us? Pietro asked. It wasn't arrogance that filled his tone. It was a mix of fear and resigned anger. Well, I guess I can be your friend, Peter said softly. Both twins softened instantly. Wanda held her hand out for Peter. The younger teen took it and led the older teen to pull him onto the cot next to her. Everything seems pretty dark and scary here. Everyone needs someone they can talk to. Thank you, little sunshine. Thank you, Wanda whispered as she started running her fingers through Peter's curls. End Dreamscape. After his first visit to the Maximoffs, Peter visited them every second or third night, depending on how tired he was from his Spider-Man work and schoolwork. In that time, he and the twins had become extremely close. They had begun to teach him Romanian, as sometimes when they were tired, the twins lapsed into one of their 2 native tongues, of Sokovia, and Romanian was easier to learn, but also close enough to Sokovian that Peter could muddle through if needed. But despite his best efforts, Peter knew something had to give. He hadn't realised just how thin he was spreading himself until he woke up one morning with a splitting headache. May nodded on his door, and it was all Peter could do not to scream in pain. As he opened his eyes, Peter let out a moan and launched himself down the hallway into the bathroom. Oh, baby, May murmured as she rubbed Peter's back gently. The boy was hunched over the toilet, spasms ripping through his body. In every time he retched, his entire body screamed in pain. You are definitely not going into school today. Have to, Peter whimpered through gags. Got a Spanish test and... Oh, decathlon practice. Baby, you can barely keep your head up, May chastised gently. I will call the school. Surely they won't mind letting you make the test up. You're far ahead enough in your studies, correct? Peter nodded helplessly before throwing himself back at the toilet. May whispered soothing words to him as he vomited. and when he felt sure there was nothing left, Peter slumped back against her. May pressed a kiss to his head and leant over to flush the toilet. Once the evidence of his sickness was gone, May helped her nephew to stand and walked him back to his room. She tucked him into bed and promised she would be right back. Peter managed to stay awake long enough to drink the water and take the pointless fever reducers May handed him. As he drifted off to sleep, he heard May talking on the phone to his school. Dreamscape. You are supposed to be the responsible ones, May hissed to a sheepish-looking reality in space. All 6 Infinity Stones were gathered around their sleeping charge. Sol was sitting on the bed beside him, running her fingers through his curls and glaring fiercely at her brothers. You know how taxing spatial jumps are. You should have kept a closer eye on him. Peter wanted the practice, Space said, and Mind fixed her glare on him. He raised his hands placatingly and looked over at his brother. We thought he could handle the intensity, Reality said, and Power let out a bemused snort from behind them. What? He's stronger than any of our other carriers, and he was progressing quickly. He seemed ready. He is also a teenage boy with the weight of the world on his shoulders, Sol said firmly, not quite yelling, but almost there, as she interrupted her sister. He is a selfless teenage boy who will never tell someone no. He needs us to look after him, not run him into the ground. Sorry. Both Space and Reality hung their heads in shame, and they both looked down at their charge. I will work with him for a little while after he is well again, Time said as he approached the group. Space and Reality made to protest, but Mind glared at them. Our sister is not letting you near him anytime soon. I will take on his training for a time. Space, Reality, Time and Power watched as their sisters took up the watch of their charge while he slept. End Dreamscape. Pete? A soft voice roused Peter from his sleep. He slowly opened his eyes and stared up at May. Hey, baby. Time for some more medication. Peter took the pills and swallowed them with a few large mouthfuls of water. May smiled fondly at the teen and pressed a kiss to his head. Did you want me to stay at home from work tonight? I still have plenty of time to call in sick, May said, and despite the pain, Peter shook his head. No, I'll be alright, Peter said hoarsely. Don't skip work for me. I'll just be sleeping anyway. If you're sure, May said. I'll tell my boss that I need my phone on me so you can call me if you need me. Peter nodded and May kissed him one final time. At the same time, Wanda and Pietro Maximoff were listening to their handlers expound the benefits of the Hydra to the newest recruits. As the handlers spoke, however, doubt was creeping into the minds of the Maximoff siblings. Ever since meeting Peter, their opinions on the world had changed. Peter had showed them a different side to humanity, one that was kind, giving, and loving. One that was the complete opposite of how Hydra portrayed the world. Pietro took his sister's hand, and the same thought flashed through their minds. What have we done? And how the hell do we get out? End of chapter 4, the redo. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Hope you enjoyed this and that I cleaned up that mistake. That was embarrassing. Anyway, really loving this. The Infinity Stones actually having a sibling dynamic is brilliant. Absolutely love that. And of course, Peter meeting the Maximoff twins and immediately becoming like a little brother to them. I just love that. Even if it wasn't Tom Holland, just the character written for Peter Parker is such a overgrown puppy that it's really hard not to love him. Even half his villains like him and only fight him because they have to. I mean, yeesh. That takes skill. Anyway, remember to like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified of whenever I upload, and make sure to tell me if I get anything wrong as well. I'm trying to get this right, but I still feel so new at this. Anyway, have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Bye!